The weeks following the confrontation with Ethan's past were both tense and transformative. The shadow of old debts and dangerous acquaintances lingered, but the bond between Chloe and Ethan had deepened in ways neither of them could ignore. The apartment that had once been a mere shelter had become a sanctuary, a place where trust could grow, where two very different worlds collided gently, yet passionately. Ethan began to navigate life differently. He applied for part-time work at a nearby music store, something he had loved before life had forced him into survival mode. Chloe, ever supportive, offered guidance without overstepping, letting him reclaim autonomy while standing quietly by his side. For the first time in years, Ethan felt capable, competent, and safe, not just physically, but emotionally. Chloe, too, discovered changes within herself. She had always been independent, driven, and successful, but something in Ethan's presence softened the edges of her meticulously ordered life. She realized she didn't need perfection or control to feel fulfilled. She needed honesty, warmth, and connection, and Ethan gave her that effortlessly. One crisp Saturday morning, Chloe invited Ethan to join her for breakfast in her apartment. She cooked simple eggs, toast, and fresh fruit, filling the space with a scent that was comforting yet intimate. Ethan, now more at ease in her world, moved around the kitchen like a guest who belonged, pouring coffee, arranging the table, and occasionally stealing glances at Chloe that made her heart skip. Not too bad for a beginner, Chloe teased lightly as Ethan fumbled with the sugar container. Beginners improve with practice, he replied, a half-smile playing at his lips. There was a confidence in him now, subtle yet undeniable, that spoke of his growing sense of self-worth. After breakfast, they settled on the sofa with mugs of coffee, the city outside shimmering under the morning sun. Silence stretched between them, comfortable and warm. Chloe watched Ethan's profile, the way the sunlight touched his hair, the quiet intensity of his eyes as he stared out the window. She wanted to reach out, to touch him, to let him know how deeply she cared. But words weren't necessary. Not yet. Ethan, sensing her gaze, turned to meet it. For a moment, everything else faded. The city, the past, the dangers, they all vanished. All that remained was the unspoken connection between them, a fragile but undeniable thread that had grown over weeks of shared vulnerability, laughter, and quiet intimacy. I never thought I'd feel like this, Ethan admitted, voice low, almost a whisper. Not for anyone. Not after everything. Chloe reached for his hand, entwining her fingers with his. I know, she said softly, and that's why it's okay to let it happen. He squeezed her hand, a silent acknowledgement of the trust and affection that had blossomed between them. For the first time, Ethan allowed himself to imagine a future beyond survival, a future where he could love and be loved, where he didn't have to hide behind walls of fear. Days later, they faced a challenge that tested the strength of their bond. The man from Ethan's past returned, demanding repayment once more. This time, Chloe refused to allow fear or anger to dictate their response. Together, she and Ethan confronted the situation calmly, negotiating, standing firm, and ultimately sending the man away with no leverage. That was intense, Ethan said later, collapsing onto the sofa in relief. I didn't know I could face it and not crumble. Chloe smiled, brushing his hair from his forehead. You didn't have to do it alone. And you didn't crumble. You were brave. And I'm proud of you. Bravery, she realized, came in many forms, not just facing danger, but allowing oneself to feel, to trust, to open a heart that had been closed for years. And Ethan had shown that courage every day since she had offered him a home. As the weeks turned into months, their relationship grew naturally. They shared quiet dinners, walks through city parks, and nights on the rooftop garden, watching stars and sharing secrets. Ethan learned to laugh again, to dream again, to believe in possibilities. Chloe learned to slow down, to savor moments, and to embrace vulnerability without fear. One evening, as the city settled into twilight, Chloe prepared a simple dinner at home. Ethan, now confident in his place in her world, set the table, lighting candles and arranging dishes with care. They ate together, laughing at small mishaps, stealing glances that spoke of something deeper than words. After dinner, Chloe moved to the window, gazing out at the city lights. Ethan joined her, placing a hand on her waist, a gentle, protective touch that made her heart flutter. "You've changed my world," Ethan said softly, his voice low but steady. "You've made me feel alive again." Chloe turned to him, her eyes glistening with emotion. "And you've changed mine," she replied. "I never imagined someone could make me feel this way. But here you are." Their lips met in a gentle, tentative kiss at first, testing the boundaries of their newfound intimacy. It deepened naturally, a slow, careful expression of the emotions they had nurtured for months. There was no rush, no urgency, just two hearts, finally finding a home in each other. Later, as they sat together in the quiet of the apartment, Ethan rested his head on Chloe's shoulder. "I don't know what tomorrow brings," he whispered, "but I know I want you in it." Chloe held him close, feeling the warmth and steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "And I want you," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "No matter what comes, we'll face it together." In that moment, the world outside, the noise, the dangers, the past didn't matter. All that mattered was the fragile, enduring love that had grown between them. They had built something stronger than fear, stronger than circumstance. A bond rooted in trust, compassion, and mutual respect. The city below continued its relentless pace, indifferent to their story. But within the walls of the apartment, time seemed to slow. Chloe and Ethan had discovered that love wasn't about wealth or status. It wasn't about past mistakes or societal expectations. It was about seeing and accepting each other fully, and allowing hearts to heal and grow together. In the weeks that followed, Ethan flourished. He found work he enjoyed, reconnected with distant family members, and rebuilt his life with Chloe's support beside him. Chloe too embraced her feelings fully, realizing that her greatest wealth wasn't her fortune. It was the connection she shared with Ethan, a love that transcended circumstance. Not one quiet night, they sat on the rooftop garden, the city lights stretching endlessly before them. Ethan took Chloe's hands in his gaze intense yet tender. "I never thought I'd believe in happiness like this," he said. "But I do because of you." Chloe smiled, tears glimmering in her eyes. "And I never thought I'd find someone who could make me feel whole," she whispered. "But I have, because of you." As they leaned together, hearts beating in synchrony, the city below seemed to fade. There were no more shadows from the past, no more fears, only the promise of a future they could face together. A love that had started in unexpected circumstances had blossomed into something enduring, tender, and deeply real. The night carried them in its quiet embrace, a gentle affirmation that some things, trust, compassion, and love could not be bought, only given. Chloe and Ethan had discovered that truth firsthand, and in the warmth of each other's arms, they knew that no challenge, no societal expectation, no past mistake could ever undo what they had found. Soft ending hook. The city lights twinkled below, indifferent to their story, yet within the apartment and on the rooftop, a world of hope, love, and possibility had been created. Chloe and Ethan held hands, hearts intertwined, ready to face whatever the future held together. And in that quiet certainty they knew, love, once it found them, would never let go. The days after that fateful dinner were quieter than either Chloe or Ethan expected. The city continued its restless hum outside the walls of Ethan's new apartment, but inside, a fragile sense of calm had settled. Ethan was no longer living day-to-day survival. Instead, he had space, warmth, and most importantly, someone who seemed to believe in him without judgment. Yet beneath the surface, tension simmered. Chloe could sense it in the way Ethan flinched at the sound of a passing siren, the way he glanced over his shoulder when the wind rattled a window, the way he kept his hand near the door when she entered the room. "Are you okay?" she asked one afternoon, as he quietly unpacked a small box of belongings he had carried with him. Ethan paused, holding a faded photograph of a younger version of himself with a woman and a little girl, his family, long gone. His throat tightened. I'm fine," he said, but Chloe recognized the lie immediately. "You don't have to pretend," she said gently, kneeling beside him. "Not here, not with me." He looked at her, a mixture of surprise and vulnerability flashing in his dark eyes. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. Not with patience, not with understanding. He had spent years shielding himself behind walls of silence and mistrust. But something about Chloe made him want to lower those walls, even if just a little. "It's complicated," he murmured finally, voice barely above a whisper. "There are things, people I thought I left behind, that they keep coming back." Chloe nodded, listening without interruption. Her presence alone was comforting, a steady anchor against the storm of his emotions. Days later, the storm arrived. A sharp knock echoed through the apartment just as Chloe was preparing tea. Ethan froze, instinctively moving in front of her. The knock came again, insistent and demanding. He opened the door a crack, and there he was, a man from Ethan's past, someone who had caused him countless sleepless nights. "Ethan Carter," the man said, his tone dangerous, almost menacing. "You owe me, and I'm not leaving until you pay." Ethan's jaw tightened. The years of pain and fear surged back, memories of nights spent hiding, of threats and humiliation, of losing everything he had ever cared about. He felt the familiar rush of panic, the tight knot of helplessness forming in his chest. Chloe stepped forward, placing a hand gently on his arm. "You're safe now," she said, her voice firm and unwavering. "I won't let anyone hurt you. Not while I'm here." Ethan stared at her, stunned by the sheer certainty in her words. No one had ever said that to him before. No one had ever promised safety or protection. His chest tightened, not from fear now, but from an unfamiliar surge of emotion. Trust, gratitude, and perhaps the beginnings of something more. A man from his past didn't wait for a response. He sneered and left a note demanding repayment, a reminder of the debts Ethan could not easily escape. Chloe and Ethan sat together on the living room sofa, the note between them, a tangible symbol of the fragility of their new life. "I don't know how to fix this," Ethan admitted, his voice raw. I can't just erase it. It's part of who I am." Chloe reached for his hand, brushing away a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "You're not alone anymore," she said softly. "Whatever happened in the past, it doesn't define you, and it certainly doesn't have to control your future." The sincerity in her voice broke something in him. Tears pricked the corners of his eyes, tears he hadn't allowed himself to shed in years. He wanted to believe her, wanted to let himself feel something beyond fear and survival. And slowly, hesitantly, he did. That night, After the confrontation had passed, Chloe invited Ethan to the rooftop garden of her building. The city spread out below them, a glittering sea of lights, the distant sound of traffic softened by the height. A gentle breeze carried the scent of night-blooming jasmine, mingling with the crisp air. Ethan leaned against the railing, his eyes distant. "I never thought I'd feel like this again," he murmured. "I never imagined anyone like you would care." Chloe stepped closer, her fingers brushing his arm. "I care," she said simply, her voice barely above the whisper of the wind. "Not because of what you had, or didn't have, but because of who you are. Not just the parts you show the world, but the parts you hide, the parts even you struggle to face." Ethan's chest tightened, his heart pounding in a rhythm unfamiliar yet exhilarating. He wanted to speak, to tell her all the things he had buried for years, to admit the fear, the loneliness, the longing, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he let silence carry the weight of what he felt, trusting that she understood without needing explanation. Chloe's hand lingered near his, almost touching, almost daring. Neither moved away. The air between them was thick with unspoken emotion, a delicate tension that felt both thrilling and terrifying. It was the first time in years that Ethan felt seen. Truly seen. Not for survival, not for pity, but for who he was beneath the scar's dot as they stood there, the city lights reflecting in their eyes. A sense of intimacy settled between them, fragile, but undeniable. Chloe noticed the subtle tremble in his hands, the way his shoulders relaxed when he leaned slightly closer. Ethan noticed the softness in her gaze, the way she lingered near him without expectation, without pressure, but just. As the moment reached a tender crescendo, reality intruded. A sharp knock echoed from the stairwell door, a reminder that the past was never far behind. Ethan froze, his body instinctively moving in front of Chloe once more. The note from earlier had been just the beginning. Someone from his past had followed him here, and this time the threat felt closer, more immediate. Chloe's eyes narrowed, protective instinct flaring. "Stay here," she said firmly, though her hand remained on his arm. "I'll handle this." Ethan wanted to protest, wanted to tell her it was dangerous, that she shouldn't put herself at risk, but he didn't. For the first time, he allowed himself to rely on someone else, to let someone else take the lead, to let someone else care. Minutes later, the danger passed, but the tension lingered. Ethan sat back on the sofa, breathing heavily, feeling a mix of adrenaline, relief, and something he hadn't expected. Longing. He realized, with a clarity that frightened him, that he didn't just appreciate Chloe's presence. Craved it. Chloe returned to his side, sitting close, her hand finding his again. Neither spoke, letting the silence hold what words could not. It was a silence full of trust, of vulnerability, and of emotions neither of them had fully named yet. Ethan finally spoke, his voice low and hesitant. I don't know why you're doing this. Why you care so much." Chloe's gaze softened. "Because I see you," she said simply. "Not just the man on the streets. Not just the past you've endured. I see you, Ethan. All of you." The weight of her words pressed against him in a way that was almost overwhelming. Years of fear, of pain, of isolation, seemed to crumble in that single moment. And with that realization came a dangerous, exhilarating truth. He was falling for her. And Chloe, she felt it too. The warmth in her chest, the subtle quickening of her pulse whenever he looked at her. The way his presence lingered in her mind, long after he had left. She had never intended to fall, never intended to blur the lines between helping and desire. But love, she realized, didn't follow rules. It simply arrived as the night deepened and the city lights shimmered below. They sat together, hand in hand, allowing the weight of their shared vulnerabilities to settle. Both knew the path ahead would not be easy. Ethan's past would not vanish overnight. The world outside their fragile bubble remained indifferent, often cruel. But for the first time in years, both of them believed that love, gentle, patient, and real, might just be strong enough to bridge the chasm between their worlds. Cliffhanger, just as Ethan leaned slightly toward Chloe. Their faces inches apart. A faint sound from the hallway made them freeze. A shadow slipping past the stairwell door. An echo of the past intruding on the fragile promise of the present. Their hearts raced and both realized. Trust had to be tested before love could truly survive. Chloe Whitman's offer had been simple on paper, yet complicated in reality. She wanted to give Ethan a chance at stability, a fresh start, a home, not charity, not a handout, but an opportunity. The idea had felt radical in her structured, orderly world, that she had followed her instincts, drawn to something raw and authentic in him. The next morning, she arranged for a car to pick Ethan up, a sleek black SUV, polished and immaculate, pulled to the curb near the corner where he had slept. Ethan hesitated at the sight, his hands tugging at the layers of ragged clothing he wore, eyes darting to the interior of the vehicle as though expecting a trap. "It's just a ride," Chloe said, her tone gentle but firm. "No one will force you to do anything you don't want." Ethan raised an eyebrow. Skepticism etched across his weathered face. "A ride? To where?" "To your new home," she replied simply. She didn't sugarcoat it, didn't try to charm him into agreement. She only offered clarity and choice, something Ethan hadn't had in years. He studied her, searching for hidden motives, then sighed. "All right, let's see this home of yours." The drive was quiet at first. Ethan stared out the tinted window, at the city rushing past, his thoughts tangled between suspicion and cautious hope. Chloe watched him from the passenger seat, noting the way his jaw tightened when he saw the skyscrapers, the way his eyes lingered on the sidewalks where the homeless had been her invisible neighbors for years. She wanted to say something, anything, to ease him, but she also respected the silence, realizing it was as much about trust as anything else. Finally, the car stopped in front of a modern building in a quieter part of the city. The lobby gleamed with polished marble floors, glass walls, and minimalist furniture. Chloe led the way to the elevator, feeling Ethan's hesitant steps behind her. When they reached the apartment, Ethan froze. The space was modest yet elegant, natural. Light spilling across neutral walls. A small living area furnished with warmth rather than extravagance. There was a kitchen with everything neatly arranged, a cozy bedroom with soft linens, and a bathroom that gleamed with cleanliness. For someone like Chloe, it was ordinary. For Ethan, it was a world apart. "I don't know what to say," he murmured, his voice betraying awe and disbelief. "It's too much." Chloe smiled softly. "It's not too much. It's enough. Enough for you to rest, to breathe, to start over." Ethan moved slowly through the apartment, touching surfaces with cautious fingers, as though confirming the reality of his new life. He set down his few belongings, a tattered backpack and a worn jacket, and paused in the living room, glancing toward Chloe. "You didn't have to do this," he said, his voice quieter now, tinged with something fragile gratitude he wasn't used to expressing. "I wanted to," Chloe replied, meeting his gaze. "I saw you yesterday, and I couldn't walk away." The first time in years, Ethan felt the weight of judgment and dismissal lift slightly. He had spent so long hiding, blending into the shadows, surviving with nothing and no one. And here was Chloe, wealthy, confident, and in her own world completely separate from his offering him a hand. Without conditions, without pity. Days turned into weeks. Chloe visited often, bringing groceries, coffee, little touches of life she assumed he might have missed. Fresh flowers, soft blankets, a book she thought he might enjoy. She never imposed, never forced him to accept anything he didn't want. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the walls around Ethan began to shift. He began to let her see fragments of himself. The boy who had loved music, the man who had once dreamed of building a business, the survivor who had learned the harshest lessons on the streets. And Chloe, in turn, shared pieces of herself. Her insecurities, her loneliness, the pressure of living a life where appearances always mattered. They shared a quiet understanding, a subtle rhythm of interaction that spoke louder than words. She admired his resilience, the way he carried his pain without breaking completely. He admired her compassion, the way she noticed him as a person, not a project. One evening, Chloe suggested they go out for dinner. Ethan's first instinct was to refuse. Restaurants were foreign, intimidating spaces where people with his history rarely felt welcome. I don't really do restaurants," he admitted, shifting uneasily. "You do now," Chloe said with a soft smile, her eyes twinkling with quiet amusement. "Tonight, you're not a survivor on the streets. You're a guest. Just let it be simple." Reluctantly, he agreed. The restaurant was intimate, dimly lit, with the warm aroma of garlic and fresh bread filling the air. Chloe chose a table near the window, where the city lights shimmered like a constellation below. She watched Ethan's initial discomfort melt into curiosity as he touched the silverware, marveling quietly at the plates and glasses. As the meal progressed, conversation flowed. Chloe asked about his childhood, his favorite memories, the dreams he once had. Ethan answered cautiously at first, then with more openness as laughter punctuated the silence. Chloe laughed easily at his dry humor, a sound that seemed to surprise him as much as it delighted her. For the first time in years, Ethan felt normal. He wasn't being judged, pitied, or ignored. He was simply being seen. And with each passing moment, an unfamiliar warmth settled in his chest. Something like hope, or trust, or even attraction. Chloe noticed it too, the way his eyes lingered on her, the subtle shifts in posture that betrayed interest, the quiet attentiveness that made her feel noticed in a way few people had ever seen her. It was intoxicating and terrifying. After dinner, they walked along a quiet street, the city's bustle fading behind them. Chloe's hand brushed against Ethan's accidentally at first, then lingered, almost imperceptibly. Neither pulled away. The connection, fragile and unspoken, began to solidify. But beneath the surface, both were aware of obstacles. Ethan's past was not entirely behind him. Old debts, former acquaintances, and scars from the streets lingered like shadows. And Chloe, despite her wealth, was aware of the social chasm between them, the whispered judgments, the unspoken assumptions about a rich girl and a homeless man. Yet for now, none of that mattered. That evening, as they paused by a street lamp, Ethan realized he had never felt so alive in years. Chloe's presence, her attention, her unwavering belief in him, ignited something dormant. "Thank you," he said softly, voice barely audible, over the hum of the city. "For everything." Chloe smiled, a mixture of tenderness and pride warming her face. "You don't have to thank me. Just let yourself live again." And for a fleeting moment, under the glow of the city lights, Ethan allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, life could be different. Maybe the past didn't define him. Maybe someone like Chloe could truly see him, not as a homeless man, but as a man worthy of love, respect, and hope. Cliffhanger. Just as they turned to head back to the apartment, Chloe's assistant called. Urgently. Miss Whitman, someone from his past has been spotted downtown. It's serious. Chloe froze, her grip tightening on Ethan's hand. The fragile bubble of trust they were building now faced an immediate threat, one that could undo everything before it had a chance to bloom. The city of New York never slept. Its heartbeat pulsed in yellow taxis weaving through crowded streets, in the distant wail of sirens, in the rhythmic clatter of subway trains deep beneath the pavement. To most people, the city was alive with opportunity but also indifferent, a place where dreams and despair coexisted like strangers on the same crowded sidewalk. Chloe Whitman walked among them with her usual poise. Her heels clicked sharply on the polished marble outside a high-end boutique, the sound cutting through the ambient hum of the city. She was in her late 20s, with a refined elegance that came from wealth and years of attending the best schools, traveling to the most exclusive destinations and surrounding herself with luxury. Her hair was perfectly styled, her clothes impeccably tailored, and her presence demanded attention without effort. To the outside world, Chloe had it all. But beneath the surface, there was a restlessness she rarely acknowledged, a quiet longing for something real, something that couldn't be bought. As she reached the corner of 57th Street, a flash of movement caught her eye. At first, she thought it was a trick of the light or the shadow of a construction tarp fluttering in the wind. But as she walked closer, she saw him. A man, huddled in ragged layers of clothing, sat against the cold stone of a shuttered shop. His hair was dark, messy, falling into tired, sharp eyes that scanned the street warily. A thin, weathered face showed years of hardship, and his hands gripped an empty coffee cup as though it were his lifeline. Around him, the world rushed past, people in tailored suits, mothers with strollers, tourists snapping photos, but he seemed invisible to them all, like a ghost trapped between two worlds. Chloe felt a strange pull in her chest, a jolt that made her stop mid-step. She wasn't accustomed to noticing the homeless. She noticed sales, art exhibitions, parties, but not people like him. And yet, something about his eyes, the rawness in them, stirred something unfamiliar inside her. Compassion? Curiosity? Perhaps a mixture of both. She hesitated, watching him for a few moments. He didn't look up, didn't beg, didn't call out. There was a quiet dignity about him that contrasted sharply with his situation. A pride that made him different from the others she had seen over the years. Chloe's instincts, which had always guided her toward decisions in business and social settings, now faltered. She didn't know what to do, but she knew she couldn't walk away. "Excuse me," she began, her voice soft and tentative, almost afraid of breaking the fragile bubble of his world. She held out a bag from a nearby cafe, its warmth seeping into her fingers. "Do you want some food?" He looked up slowly, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. I don't want charity," he said, his voice low and guarded. It carried the weight of someone who had faced rejection, humiliation, and hardship countless times before. Chloe felt a flicker of discomfort but also fascination. Most people accepted help gratefully, or at least begrudgingly, but not him. He had boundaries and he had pride, and somehow that made him magnetic to her. She swallowed, gathering courage she didn't know she had. "Maybe I can help in another way," she said, her voice trembling slightly, betraying her usual confidence. "Not charity. Something else." His eyebrow arched in curiosity. He didn't trust easily, but her tone intrigued him. "And what way is that?" he asked, skeptical. Chloe took a deep breath. She had rehearsed this in her mind a dozen times before, yet the words still felt strange leaving her lips. I want to offer you a place to live, a home. Not as a gift but a fresh start. Somewhere you can feel safe, where you can rebuild. For a moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant sounds of the city. He blinked, disbelief flashing across his face. You can't just buy a person a home, he said, a harsh laugh escaping his lips. That's not how life works. Chloe shook her head, a small, almost shy smile forming. Maybe not, she admitted softly. But maybe life doesn't always have to work that way. Maybe sometimes we get to choose something different. He studied her, his guarded expression softening slightly. There was a vulnerability in her eyes, an honesty that didn't feel rehearsed or transactional. She wasn't offering pity. She wasn't offering a handout. She was offering a chance, and that was different. My name's Ethan, he said finally, the single word carrying a weight of history, loneliness, and survival. Chloe Whitman, she replied, holding out her hand. He hesitated, then shook it, the touch tentative but electric. In that moment, two very different worlds collided, wealth and want, comfort and struggle, order and chaos. And in that collision, something fragile, anew began to grow. Chloe handed him her business card, her fingers brushing his briefly. Call me, she said simply. Or don't. But know that the offer stands. Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't know what to make of her, or of the strange hope that had surfaced in his chest. He had survived on the streets, for years, building walls around his heart to avoid disappointment, to avoid attachment. And yet, standing there, he felt a crack in those walls, an unfamiliar warmth that unsettled him, but not unpleasantly. Before either of them could say more, the distant screech of brakes turned into a sharp, jarring reality. A sleek black car came to a stop nearby, engine growling, tires skidding slightly against the pavement. Chloe instinctively stepped forward, shielding Ethan with her body as the car's tinted windows rolled down, revealing a man in an expensive suit with a message that made Chloe's heart tighten. And just like that, the fragile, delicate moment was shattered. The streets that had felt like a sanctuary only moments ago now seemed alive with uncertainty. Chloe and Ethan exchanged a look, a mixture of curiosity, caution, and a spark of something unspoken. Neither of them knew what was coming next, but both sensed that this encounter was only the beginning of a story far bigger than either had anticipated. As Chloe watched Ethan slip the business card into his pocket, she felt a quiet determination bloom inside her. She didn't know how this would end. She didn't know if he would accept her offer, or if fate would twist it all into chaos. But she knew one thing: she couldn't turn away. Not now. Not from him. And for Ethan, standing there with the city's noise washing over him, the card felt heavier than any wallet, heavier than any luxury he had ever seen. It carried a promise, a challenge, and the hope he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. For the first time, he wondered, could someone like her really see someone like him? The answer, neither of them knew yet, would change their lives forever. Soft hook cliffhanger. The black car idled just a few feet away, the driver stepping out with an urgency that cut through the stillness. Chloe felt a shiver run down her spine. Ethan's past, or perhaps a danger from her own world, had arrived, threatening to derail this fragile connection before it had even begun.